we make things. We use our hands, minds, and machines to build, to fix, to improve. We're known as do-it-yourselfers, home improvement fans, fix-it fanatics, inventors. At our core, though, we're all makers. So let's jump in and make something. Hi, I'm Ron Hazelton. Thanks for joining me. Now today we're going to learn all there is to know about applying ceramic tile over a plywood floor. Armed with this, you'll be able to tile like a pro and end up with a floor that will last a lifetime. Ever heard of pickling? Well, it's another term for whitewashing, a technique made famous by Mark Twain's Huckleberry Finn. And it's a treatment that can be perfect for unfinished wood furniture. We'll see how to do it. We all know about protecting outdoor wood from weather and rain, but what about concrete, terracotta, clay, and other materials? They too benefit from waterproofing. See why and learn how to do it. Now this is a new unfinished pine corner cabinet, and rather than paint or stain it a solid color, I want to put a pickled whitewash finish on here. The wood and grain underneath will actually show through a bit. It's easy to do. Here's how.
First, I'll remove the doors and then get ready to do some sanding. This is a quarter sheet of 120 grit sandpaper that I'm folding into thirds. Notice how the sandpaper holds its shape this way and allows me to apply pressure evenly as I move it back and forth in the direction of the wood grain. The folded pad conforms easily to the rounded edges, yet works equally well on the flat panel faces. To sand the bevels on the edge of the raised panels, I wrap the paper around a piece of scrap wood. This allows me to sand up into the corners and keep a clean angle. For larger flat surfaces, an orbital or palm sander can speed things up.
Now I'm going to be staining this piece and not painting it. And sometimes when you stain a soft wood like this pine, the finish can appear blotchy. Now to avoid that, I'm going to condition the wood beforehand with something called a pre-stain.
This is a water-based product that needs to be stirred thoroughly. I apply the pre-stain with a brush intended for water-based or latex paints. The pre-stain doesn't really change the appearance of the wood, but it will help ensure that any stains I put on from here forward look their very best. After about a half hour, the surface is ready for a light sanding with 120 grit paper. This is an important step because the pre-stain, like any water-based material, tends to raise and stiffen the grain, which the sandpaper will cut off cleanly. This is a whitewash pickling stain designed to impart color to the wood but not obscure the grain and character. It produces a less formal country appearance, but at the same time looks sophisticated. I apply the pickling stain with a brush. Then, using a piece of cotton cloth folded into a pad, I wipe the surface, always moving in the direction of the grain. The greater the pressure I apply, the more of the stain I remove, and the more of the wood below shows through. Whitewashing harkens back to the days of Mark Twain and Tom Sawyer. It's an easy finish to apply and can be very effective when it comes to blending varying background wood colors. Plus, it's a good bit of fun.
Now this is the top coat that I'm going to use on this project. It's a clear, water-based polyacrylic. It looks milky now, but it will dry clear. I've chosen this for a couple of reasons. First of all, the pickling stain that we put on here is water-based, and so is the top coat, so they're in the same family. And also, this polyacrylic will not yellow over time, and that's important when I'm putting it on top of a light finish like this. I want it to stay clear and not yellow. This is a brush made especially for water-based or latex paints. Very good quality, which is important in putting down a clear finish.
See how nicely these bristles are tapered right here at the ends? And they're well fastened into this metal ferrule so that they won't come out and deposit themselves in the new finish.
I'm going to pour the polyacrylic into a clean 1-quart container to make it easier to load the brush. I'll apply the coating with long, smooth strokes, following the direction of the grain wherever I can. On larger surfaces like this top, I almost always finish with long, overlapping strokes, a process painters call striking off.
Now I've put these blocks under the cabinet so that when I get down here to apply the finish to the bottom, it won't run off and stick to the paper underneath.
The first coat needs about 4 hours to dry. Then I give the surface a final sanding with 220 grit paper. This sticky tack cloth is ideal for removing the powdery residue left by the sanding. Now it's time for the second, and in this case final, coat of polyacrylic. After everything dries thoroughly, I reinstall the doors and take the cabinet inside.
When it comes to setting tile over plywood floors, there's no one who knows how better than master tile setter Armand Tavy. In fact, he's invented a patented method and material that virtually guarantees professional quality results. However, as Armand points out, it's what's under the tile that makes all the difference between a tile job destined for failure and one that's guaranteed to hold up for the life of your home. That's especially true when the tile is being laid over a plywood subfloor.
Before laying tile over any plywood subfloor, it's important to make sure that the floor itself is free from excessive deflection or bending, which can pop grout joints and loosen or crack tiles. A glass of water can detect deflection that's otherwise hard to see with your eye. A single sheet of 3/4 inch plywood is normally not adequate as a substrate for tile. The tile industry recommends a subfloor that's at least 1.25 inches thick. In this case, we're going to add a second sheet of 3/4 inch exterior grade plywood. The plywood seams where the sheets meet should be offset from each other. This provides added strength and minimizes flexing at the joints. Another way to reduce deflection is with proper nailing. Use a chalk line to mark out a grid. Underlayment should be nailed or screwed every 8 inches in the field and every 6 inches around the perimeter. The nails themselves should be long enough to pass through both layers of underlayment. Be sure to drive all nail heads flush with or below the surface with an extra hammer blow. And leave 1/16 inch gap between sheets to allow for expansion. Now this may look like overkill, but a properly installed subfloor is an important key to a trouble-free tiling job. Laying out a tile job can mean literally that, actually laying out the tile across the room in both directions using spacers for the grout joints. What you want to avoid are narrow slivers of tile around the edge of the room, or tiles of differing widths on one side of the room versus the other. Slide tiles back and forth until you end up with edge tiles that are an attractive size and equal in width. The tiles that go around the perimeter of the room can be cut to width using a manual scoring type tile cutter. A carbide wheel scores the surface, then a bar exerts pressure on both sides of the cut, cleanly snapping the tile along the line. With the layout complete, it's now time to begin preparing the surface for tiling using Armand Tavy's thin skin system. First, he applies a coat of adhesive to the subfloor using a straight trowel. Then he lays fiberglass reinforced paper mats, he calls them thin skin, on top of the adhesive. Finally, he presses the paper into contact using a wide putty or joint knife. Next, he mixes, then applies a thin skim coat of mortar that conditions the paper. Once again, he uses a straight-edge trowel to spread the material. The mortar, in effect, acts as a sort of primer on the paper, creating a cement surface to which the tile will bond perfectly. Using a notched trowel, Armin now applies a coat of thin-set tile mortar. Notice how he holds the trowel at a 45 to 60 degree angle, allowing the notches on the trowel edge to create uniform rows or ridges. This ensures that the mortar is laid down evenly and at the proper thickness, so that the entire back of the tile will be in contact with the material. Now it's time to set some tile.
Watch the technique. I set the tile, drop it down. I'm going to push it forward about 1/4 of an inch to 3/8 of an inch. What does this do? It takes the high ridges and drops them down into the low ridges or no ridges. Pull it back. What I've done is I've transferred mortar to the back of the tile, more than likely 100%.
This technique of sliding the tile back and forth not only distributes mortar evenly on the tile back, it also produces clean joints without ridges, allowing grout to be uniform in thickness and consistent in color, preventing the mortar from showing through. As the tiles are laid, spacers are inserted to ensure that the joints and grout lines are straight, even, and uniform in width. This invention of Armin's, called a tile puck, ensures that tiles are level with each other. A telltale click as the puck passes over a joint means that one tile is higher than the next, a condition fixed with a couple of taps from a rubber or plastic mallet. Once the tile is laid into the thin-set mortar, it should be left to dry for at least 24 hours before grouting. Then the spacers can be taken out. In this case, Armin uses his feet in what may look like the dance of the tile fairies. Grout should first be mixed dry to blend all the ingredients and ensure a uniform color. Then water is added and the mixture is stirred until it's smooth and creamy.
Now, we're going to let that slake.
A sponge rubber float is used to apply grout. Armin first forces the material all the way to the bottom of the joint, completely filling it. Then he tilts the float up on edge and, moving diagonally from corner to corner, removes any excess material from the face. If the float is not kept on the diagonal, it can scoop out grout previously put into the joint.
Now the more we remove off the tile with the float, the less we have to wash when it's time to wash it.
The grout is then left to dry about 45 minutes to an hour until the material is firm in the joints and a dry haze is visible on the face of the tile. At this point, it's time to clean off the remaining grout using a grout sponge dipped in water.
We're going to take about 80% of it out and leave some behind. We're going to take the sponge and just coat it over the tiles.
For the final wash, Armin tips the sponge up so that just the edge is in contact with the tile and makes 4 strokes.
Flip the sponge over. 3rd stroke. 4th stroke.
Once the tiles are thoroughly dry, any remaining haze is removed with a soft cloth.
Here's a normal cloth. Simple, clean cloth. We're going to take this up, bundle it up like this, and we're going to get it onto the haze. We're going to rub the haze just like we're polishing our car. And this is as good as it gets.
So let's recap. The system consists of adhesive, reinforced paper, a thin-set skim coat, a thin-set bedding coat, and the tile. And the whole thing, including the tile, is less than ½ an inch thick.
When it comes to weatherproofing or waterproofing outdoor surfaces, well, most often we think of wood, but there are other materials that would also benefit from the right kind of waterproofing.
Concrete bird baths, planters, and lawn ornaments, for example, are porous and can absorb water. In some cases, this moisture can freeze, expand, and cause cracking. A multi-surface waterproofer like this can prevent that kind of damage. For larger areas, the easiest way to apply it is with a garden-type sprayer. Pour it in, pump up the pressure, and apply. It's important to avoid puddling and pooling. A thin, even coat works best. Keep the spray nozzle about 12 inches from the surface and move back and forth in smooth strokes. The waterproofer dries fairly quickly. After about 48 hours, perform a splash test to determine if another coat is required. If the water beads up like this, the surface has adequate protection. Terracotta or clay pots are also very porous and can be easily damaged by freezing. For small pieces like these, the waterproofer comes in a convenient aerosol can. Just shake and spray. Again, the splash test shows the result. The outdoor waterproofer can be used on other materials as well. Smaller wooden objects like this birdhouse can be easily and quickly treated with the aerosol can. The sealer will protect the wood but allow it to age naturally. If you're a hiker, camper, or boater, you can waterproof maps and charts with the same aerosol sealer. Just lay the article flat and apply an even coating to one or both sides. When dry, water will run off without penetrating, while the chart or map will remain flexible.
So when it comes to protecting concrete, brick, terracotta, maps, birdhouses, or just about anything else from outdoor moisture, well, waterproof protection is just a spray away. Now, when it comes to working on electrical circuits, there are two really important things to keep in mind. One, make sure the electricity is off while you're working, and two, you want to make sure that the wires are attached to the proper terminals. Now, there are a whole bunch of cool tools to help you do that. Let me show you a few.
This low-cost voltage tester has two probes that can be inserted into the slots of a receptacle. The probes can also be touched to terminals. Either way, this type requires direct contact to operate. This pen-style detector has an audible signal and a single probe. Now, unlike the pigtail probe, it requires no direct contact and can sense electrical flow even through a wire's insulation. Some electrical tools, like this wire stripper, have built-in detectors, in this case, in the handle. This screwdriver alerts the user that current is still flowing. A plug-in circuit tester, like this one, not only detects current, but also lets you know if the outlet is wired correctly.
With devices like these, it's easier than ever to work safely and accurately.
To view today's projects again, visit ronhazelton.com, where you'll find hundreds of how-to videos available 24/7. Free home improvement videos online 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.